This is the 24 volt version of this diesel heater. They have a 12 volt, but I've got a 24 volt system, so I'll be using 24, not 12. This unit is about 16 inches long. Before you put any ducting onto it, it's about 16 inches out of the box. And the rest of the unit is square, about 6 inches by 6 inches. So you've got 6 by 6 by 16. The next piece we have is the diesel tank, which is, what do you have, 13 inches? About 13 inches wide. And it is 16 inches tall. And let's see, what do we got? 3.5, 3.25, 3.5 inches deep. Those are the dimensions for the tank. There's no outlet. You've got your fill here, but there's no outlet. You have to install the outlet yourself, and then it has these 3 mounting holes and comes with self-tapping screws to screw that into whatever you're mounting it to. But you have to install your own outlet, and it has the fittings for it, but it doesn't tell you what size drill bits or anything to use. So I'm going to dig out some tools and see what we can do about that. This is the diesel outlet, this fitting here. Your diesel goes through there. And it looks like it's a 5/16 drill hole size to make this happen. Getting it installed will be another fun little chore. Let's go. They have these flat surfaces. This is on the bottom and this is on the side. And this is where they show you're drilling it through this. So you have a flat surface, a flat mating surface to seal it so that it doesn't leak. Now we're going to try to get all the little plastic debris out of here. It will have a filter on it. It does come with a filter, but we'll try to get rid of as much of this as we can before doing anything else. This fitting, it fits in that hole, so that drill size was correct. The problem is this has to be fished in from the inside all the way down from the top. It has to be fished in because this is actually going to be inside. And then it has a washer and a retaining nut to hold it from the outside. They don't provide any way to get this down there to here, so we're going to try to find up a rustle piece of wire to put through here to feed that through. That's probably going to be one of the hardest parts of this installation, is getting this stupid thing in. Fortunately, I have spools of wire, so I should be able to make this work. This will feed down in through here, and then we should be able to pull it back out. We'll feed this up into the hole and then pull this guy down into where we need it, and then we'll get a nut on it. Let's see. I'm feeding this wire in, but it's not a straight shot because I've got to get to the nozzle up there and get it in, and they've got these 2 little molded sections here, so I've got to work around those. Those will both be in my way of getting there, so I'm going to set this camera down and use 2 hands to get this wire fed all the way through. I now have the wire all the way through. I'm putting the fitting on this wire. And I'm going to bend this little piece sticking out. I'm going to bend that to hold this so that I can yank it through. Okay, we've got that bend in here, and we've also got that washer. Don't know if you can see that, but that washer, focus, that washer is on there on the inside of the tank, and then this nut will go on the outside. So now we're going to pull this through to the other end. There it is. Important not to let go of it, and then we'll have to cut that wire. We'll cut the wire and then fish the little end piece out that's inside the tank. We'll get that out through the nozzle. So we got to get the bolt on here next. And when I say bolt, I mean nut. It's backwards day or opposite day, right? Yeah, sounds good. Okay, let's work with that. This is now installed, and I used a 12 gauge wire. You probably use a 12 or 14. You may be able to get a little coat hanger to go in there and do like I did. Something along those lines is what it's going to take, and it doesn't come with it in the package. And then this right here is where our fuel line attaches to here, and then it goes into the fuel filter, and then from there it goes into the fuel pump. From the fuel pump it will go to the actual heating unit. This comes with a roughly 1 foot tube of fuel line, black fuel line, and then we have our inline filter, and then we have our fuel pump. It also comes with this teeny tiny fuel line, and can't really get it to focus on that very well. There you go. But I mean, there's a long run of this. I haven't measured it, but this is pretty long. This tube here actually fits inside. I don't think it's focusing correctly, but this fits inside of this tube where you need it to go, depending how you run it. You have to cut this piece here because you need this to attach the filter, the fittings on the fuel filter. Both ends need the black hose, and the fuel pump and the filter both need black hose. So you will have to cut this into pieces for each end of this and each end of this, and then where it leaves going to the unit, you will also need another piece of this because this attaches to the actual heating unit itself. You'll need a piece of that for that as well. And the run in between those is using this little flexible cable to get from A to B, or from the fuel pump to the unit. You'll use this, but this right here has to be cut into little pieces and used throughout to make all the pieces connect. And they have hose clamps wherever you put this here. They've got hose clamps that come with it for everything. This hose will cut with a standard utility knife, and then you'll need a little pair of pliers. I'm using my electrical strippers just because that's what I have, but you'll slide this up into place and let that go. That's simple standard clamp. I went back and got the vice grips because with these hose clamps, they're very snug. I had to kind of force the issue a little bit with these, but we've got this here. The next will be going from the filter to the fuel pump. This one is a little more critical as far as the installation goes and how long I want to leave everything, because they want this pump mounted at an angle. So if I can't go straight into it, it'll need a longer piece so I can get the angle that they want me to have in the installation procedures. This fuel pump has an arrow showing you a flow direction, and that flow direction is going to the unit away from the gas can. So we've got one hose installed here, and then we'll cut that to length once we get the right angle figured out for the installation. This shows the pump, showing you they're looking for 30 degrees on this here. What's it, up to 90, I guess. The directions aren't well defined here. There's also another chart in the instructions showing you relative to where your gas tank is versus where the unit is, what your pumping height is on this little pump, because theoretically you could install this too low and not have enough pumping power to pump it up to the unit. Standard vehicle, that height here, it's showing 3 meters, which would be 9 feet. Any kind of standard installation, you should be well within spec on this, but it is something to consider. But yeah, we are going to look for that mounting angle over here. Here's a quick look at where we are. There's the angle they're looking for here, and then we're getting into this tubing will feed into here, and then we'll be putting another hose clamp on that. This is not easy to get into there. It's really easy to kink this stuff, but that's where we are. And then this spool will go to the unit, and when it gets to the unit, it goes back into this last piece of the black fuel line that I saved, and this will go into the unit, And then at the bottom here, we will have this little semi-translucent fuel line. We'll go into that. I saved a piece as long as I could for this to give me as much play as I can, because I don't know how much distance I'm going to need from the bottom of the unit to where I can actually access it with my hands to put the things together. This is the bottom of the unit. This essentially is your exhaust port. That'll go into there and have a hose clamp on it. This is your air intake hose. This will go onto here and we'll have a hose clamp on it. And this right here is a little fuel line you have to access that you've got to get this guy, if I can pull that out. I've got the shiny mounting bracket where you see my reflection. That's the mounting bracket. I just have it on there just so it's not getting misplaced. But this will go onto here with another clamp will go onto that, and I can't really get it on there with one hand, but that'll give you an idea where I've left this long, so I've got some room to play, because when it actually gets under the vehicle, you are going to have these two hoses to contend with while trying to mount that, while trying to get your mounting bolts onto everything else. So it's going to be a really tight space under there. So leave this guy long so you have some room to work with. If you need extra or you run out, something like that, you can get this fuel line at pretty much any auto parts store will have this. You can just bring it in, what's it, 1/4 inch, 3/8, something, I don't know. Just bring a piece of it in if you need more, and this is easy to get. But I'm leaving this piece as long as I can just to make it easier for when I've actually got to do the work under the vehicle with this. I've used this mounting bracket in a Sharpie, use this as a template back here. As you can see, there's lighter markings and darker markings because this is what we do. You measure once, cut 3 times, something like that. I actually set it in backwards the first time, and this is going to mount. It'll be back in here under all this nonsense. The next step is to see what is below where I want to mount this to make sure I'm not drilling into anything that's going to cause me problems. And maybe I should clean this corner out a little bit while I'm here. We're now under the vehicle, and rough measurements were 11.5 to 13, and then somewhere around 3.5 off the back would center that up, so we should be right in this area here. So doesn't look like there's any wiring or structural or anything in our way. So this looks like we're okay to drill through to actually install this unit. Hopefully I'm right. Here's another thing to not lose focus on. These are not going to be your typical run-of-the-mill bits. Typically your vehicle is made out of metal that you're installing this in, so you will have to have metal bits for these. Something metal hole saw type things, step bit, and this is 1.25 inch bimetal. We're going to try that one first to see if it works, because the next size up is 1.5 inches. 1.5 inches is kind of running into our mounting holes. I don't like that, and I don't really want to power through this with a step bit. This is just a cheap knockoff one, and it would probably take me 5 years to do that. But this is the 1.25 inch for these guys, and then we'll have 1 to 4 mounting holes to do, and then a hole for this gas line. And hopefully there isn't much subfloor in there, because I've got to get this to go through the holes from the inside, and then I've got to get the nuts and tubing and hose clamps, all that stuff. I've got to get access to that. So I'm hoping everything goes smoothly on this. But yeah, just remember, you're going to need a few specialty drill bits to get this done. Also, doesn't hurt to use some kind of lubricant on this metal to metal so you don't dull the bit out too quick. I have managed to drill through one of these holes. You can see daylight through there, but more importantly, look at this thickness that I'm dealing with here. It goes down here, here, and here. this flooring can come out, probably will, but I've still got a little bit of thickness to the meat of the floor, and that could very well prove challenging as far as, you know, getting things to mount up the way I want them to. We could run into some problems with that on this. Good times. This is what we're looking like from underneath. These are your 2 ports and those screws, but they're all recessed in. The side view of it, there's no space to clamp anything. The bolts that come with it are recessed because there's a second layer of metal in here that we went through. How we're going to get bolts and things like that, or anything for that matter, matched up to that will be a challenge. But I guess that's what I signed up for, right? This is what we are looking like on the inside. There really is no margin of error here, so time to get creative. See how we get this to work. Has to work. I have a side compartment on my vehicle where I'm putting this fuel tank for vehicles that don't. This is probably one of the hardest parts, I think, is figuring out where to safely mount this diesel fuel tank. But I've got it here on the side, and it mounts with these 3 screws, self-tapping screws. And behind this insulation, there's metal, so it fastens into there. And I'm going to clear all this junk out, but the fuel pump and line will go into here. Will be all below here, and then we'll go back in. The actual heater is on the other side of this wall, so the fuel tank will just run through there and around to where I need to go, and then I've got to bring the power through here to this fuel pump. So that is what we will be working on next. This fuel pump comes with this rubber bracket, which also functions as a dampener because this thing has a clicking sound and click, click, click every time it fires, and that can cause vibration and whatnot in the vehicle. I'm hoping that mounting this through that bracket and also through the insulation like this and keeping that angle that they want will help quiet this thing. If not, then I may have to rework this and put some insulation or something around it for sound deadening. But for now, I'm hoping that this will do it. So this right here just has a screw that's going to go right through there, and that'll take care of that. Okay, that takes care of that. This is where a fuel line will go through. Put a hole in the wall here, and that'll go into the unit. Actually, I'm lying. The unit actually has the fuel line below, which will be down here. So I've got to go out here underneath and then around to it. We do have to put a hole in here in this side for the power, because the power attaches to the unit and attaches to the thermostat. That's all a wire bundle. So we have to make a hole in here to run that through. We're going to use our little step drill to go through here and make this hole. It's going to be right about there. We have our hole started. It's got to be bigger to fit the adapter plug, but if you can see back in there, we've got 2 layers of metal we've got to go through just to make it a little bit more fun. We are back inside, and this is the fitting plug for the fuel pump that's on the outside. You probably can't really see it, but there's a hole way back in that corner. If I turn this light off, you may be able to see. Okay, there's that hole. So we're going to check to see if that's large enough, and that's where we will be running our power to the fuel pump. There's our, there it is. That's for the fuel pump, and this just clicks on here. I didn't hear it snap, so I'll double check that with 2 hands in a second. But it's important where we've got holes going through, and down here we're going to get a little hole. We're going to put our fuel line through here. Anywhere you're drilling holes and running power, or your fuel lines or any of that stuff. It's really important to insulate it so when you're going, you're not getting any rubbing. You don't want to drive down the road and rub a hole in your fuel tank, or short out your fuel tank, short out your fuel pump, or cause a fire or anything like that. So it's important to insulate these things, especially when they go through metal bodies and walls and things of that nature. Keep it safe. This is where we fill. Want to make sure you've got a funnel that'll reach that, or a fuel can, or whatever it is. Make sure you leave enough clearance above that so that you can actually put the diesel in it. I've got to run this fuel line through, and then I have to run the power to the main power supply, and then I've just got to get some diesel. I don't have any right now, so I will procure some of that very soon. I've got the fuel line running through, and I've got to get under there and attach it to the fuel line on the bottom of the unit, but if you can tell, it's a little bit wet right now. So that crawling under the vehicle to do that is going to have to wait. Back under the belly of the beast, we've got our exhaust pipe, and then the black one is the air intake. That comes over to this little air breather, and this is our fuel line. This guy right here, that's the fuel line. And then this comes over to a muffler I've got mounted pretty much at the edge of the vehicle. And I've got that little screwed in clamps. I'm going to see how this works, where it's at. I'm going to check and monitor the temperature once I get this thing started. That pretty much sums up the installation. I've got a few other things I've got to go look at, but the next will be going through the trying to set up the thermostat and all that stuff with its foreign instructions. It's going to be fun. So here's a little unit in this cubby. Don't mind the wires. It'll also all be tucked away. This is my little cabinet space. My computer and a bunch of other wires and nonsense that lives back in there. And then this heater will be down here. It'll draw air in from above, and then it'll come out. We're going to put a little duct thing right there. But this all gets covered over and is completely concealed. I have not trimmed this to fit or cleaned all the wood chips up off the floor. What a mess this has made. Anywho, this is essentially what the ducting is. You've got your corrugated tube, and then you've got a couple different fittings. There's an elbow in here and another piece, and that's the elbow. And this is expandable corrugated, so you can move that around to do different things. But I'm going to tuck it in a little shorter, but I just wanted to put this here to show you that essentially is what this will do. It'll blow the warm air here out front, and it'll pull the cool air in from behind. I'm just going to show these momentarily. This is the remote that comes with this unit, and then you can adjust the pump. I'm not going to go into any details on this because this is not the standard thermostat deal that's coming with them, but that's another story. But we have that, and then it comes with a key fob, and this sits by my bed, and I've got it on and off, and then I can turn the temperature up and down. So this just hangs on a little hook by my bed. So whenever in the morning, I can get up in the morning, I can push the button to turn the heat on, get it warm before I get out of bed because I'm lazy. That's the whole point of this thing, right? Yes. But I'm not going to go into any details on this because this is not the standard thermostat and key fob that you get with these units when you get one of these things off Amazon. So I'll end this here. Talk to you later.